Welcome to a war game review from theplayersaid.com. I'm Grant. Today I'm taking a look at a very interesting solitaire game published in 2018 from Tiny Battle Publishing called Rogue State. Let me show you the cover of the rule book. So Rogue State, it is a solitaire geopolitical simulation of basically about 70 years of North Korean history from 1953 to the future, 2030. So the player takes on the role of the supreme leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or DPRK. Obviously, in the beginning, you're playing Kim Jong-il, then Kim Jong-sun, and then Kim Jong-un. Sorry if I get all the names wrong, but that's kind of the history of that. But you are playing this game acting as the supreme leader of North Korea, and you're trying to guide your country through those 70 years of history to emerge as a power on the world stage. You have to do this by managing scarce resources. You have to do this by dealing with development of your technology, development of your infrastructure, and your productivity and your production level. You have to develop a military. Nuclear development is also something that you're working on, trying to maintain some semblance of a normal social economy so that your people are satisfied and don't revolt. You're also trying to manage, and these are all shown on this cool map here, but you're trying to manage the Russia-China relations, which are your allies. They are your source of funding. They also protect you from, NATO. So this game stretches from the end of the Korean War, like I said, to about 10 years into the future. And it's a very interesting game. Now, before I dive into the game and how it works and what happens and how you take actions, etc., I do want to make a kind of an umbrella statement about the game. This is not a game that you're going to quote-unquote have fun playing, right? You are literally simulating a very dictatorial regime as they try to suppress people, deny, individuality, deny freedoms, etc., not even necessarily provide a good standard of living, a passable standard of living. You're also going to hear words as I go through and discuss the actions. You're going to hear negative words like oppression, bribery. You're also going to hear threats. You're going to hear threat of the world. You're going to hear things like nuclear launch potentially. You're going to hear that I am trying to take away or siphon away funds, scarce funds, to develop technology, industrial production, investment into infrastructure and nuclear development, rather than focusing on social economy and trying to make my people's lives better. So it's an interesting paradox here, this game. I'm going to be honest, it was a very interesting experience. I've played it now twice, 2 full times. Plus, the first time I read through the rule book, kind of did the example of play and then pushed counters around the board, simulating the different aspects so I could get comfortable with them. Also, the designer, Mike Molyneux, put out a very good video on YouTube. I think it's called Molyneux Family is the channel name, and he only has that one video. But he did describe the board, the reasoning behind it, how you do things, how you take actions, etc. So I wanted to get past that first part. You are playing, in essence, the bad guys. I hate to say it. I hate to be cut and dried that way. I'm an American. Obviously, I see things a little differently than maybe you or others do. But in this game, I believe I'm playing the bad guys. I'm playing the regime that doesn't value human life, doesn't care about freedom, and those kind of things that I do believe in. And you're trying really to simulate this over a 70-year period. right? Give or take. 80 years, actually. 1953 to 2030 is, what is that, 77 years. So it's interesting. It is a simulation where different things affect different things and are connected. So if you do something well, you're going to get benefit in another area. If you do something poorly, you're going to lose in another area. And your whole goal is to make it through those 77 years alive. And alive means you haven't had a revolution go against you. You haven't had a coup d'etat assassinate you. You haven't had a coalition offensive against you that ended your regime and you were replaced. So you're going to have many of those opportunities to be replaced. I'm going to tell you, there's things that happen that you just can't control. So I want to get that out of the way, but you're going to hear me say words that you're going to be like, whoa, Grant just said that. Bribery, oppression, denying, taking away food and things to build infrastructure, nuclear development, launching missiles, nuclear holocaust, etc. These are all things that you're going to hear me say as I explain this game. So I wanted to get that out of the way up front. The good news is this game is a very interesting simulation that deals with this situation. And first I want to look at the board, and I've already done an unboxing video of this, but I'm going to go ahead and take a minute or two to explain it, because you're not going to understand what I'm saying when you go through it if you don't get this. This board represents a control panel. So it's a theoretical control panel that allows the player to manipulate and interact with the different elements of running a country. Economy, technology, investment, military, etc. You're going to interact with this control panel, pulling buttons by putting counters here and putting resources there. And then you're going to do a lot of dice rolling. The game uses a lot of dice rolling. You're going to roll the dice anywhere from 10 to 15 times a turn, sometimes more, depends on what's going on, which is okay. You just need to understand it's luck-based. But the thing I like about it, and I think the design choice that Mike Molyneux took, was that it's not just straight out luck. You have the ability to manipulate or mitigate that luck to make it less likely that it will happen, or more likely that something will happen. For instance, I'm going to show you, here is the nuclear development section, and we'll go into this a little bit. You notice that there's a die here, and then a panel that shows 4 different boxes. This represents your minister, your director of research. So he's your director of nuclear development and research, and he's going to affect your roll every turn based on his skill value. He's currently a 2. His high skill value can be a 6. So you're going to have to figure out how to get him up by using things like intimidation and purging. Those are 2 words also that are the negative type that you will hear me say. But the great thing is you have a target number. Here you'll notice there's some symbology, and then there's a number. If you can see that, it says 14. If I'm trying to move up our nuclear technology, I have to get a greater than or equal to a modified 14 on some dice rolls, modified by my minister, as well as potentially resources that I place in this area. So each turn, the player is going to generate a certain amount of resources. These are resource tokens. They represent, quote unquote, 1 resource token. Doesn't necessarily represent any amount of money. But when you allocate those, you can put a certain amount of those towards your effort in developing nuclear development, or your infrastructure investment here, or your capital investment, or your social economy, or your diplomacy. You can also put them in these negative areas, oppression and bribery. So you can place those resources, and they're simply going to add +1 to your die rolls. So for instance, let's just really quickly look at this. I'm trying to get a 14. My minister is a 2. I've put down 2 resources, so I'm going to be +4 on this roll. I'm then going to roll 2d6. I'm just going to roll them here on the board. I'm going to show you that it's pretty hard to I think I just changed that, but I rolled a 5, modified by a 4. I'm going to roll a 9. I fail. Therefore, these resources that I used are spent. They're going to go back to the pool, and I failed doing that. But that's what you're going to do. You're going to allocate your resources to do things that you know you need to do. Build up your production level so you get more dollars, more of these resource tokens. You're going to invest in your infrastructure that's badly deteriorating, you'll notice you start down here in these negative areas. And based on where you are in your production, you're going to come down and you're going to lose a certain amount of resources. If you're at this bottom level, you can see you start here at the second to bottom level. You're going to lose -3, -4, or -5, depending on what column you're coming from. So you got to invest in that, move that up and move it down. It's going to eventually move down as your resources degrade over time. You're also going to worry about this export market. That's really manipulated by cards. Export market is an indicator of your economy's health and wealth. And the lower it is, that's how many resources you're going to be able to get. The higher it is, you can get more resources from your production. So that's something you got to worry about. Your debt, you're going to track your debt. So those are kind of the production or industrial capacity areas of the board and your turn. That's how you generate resources. In the middle is your technology. Down on the bottom, you've got your nuclear development. Up here, you've got your different critical events that you're going to track. Natural disasters, revolutions, coup d'etat, and then coalition offensive. All of these things can be modified with resources being put in or different actions being taken. We'll cover those very briefly. Here you can issue threats. If you believe that you are going to be attacked by a coalition offensive, and you're going to know that because if your regional tension number is really high, let's say 10 or 9, if it's a 9, you're going to be put in the 10 spot actually, because you kind of round it up, and that's going to succeed on a roll of 10 or less on a 12-sider. So you can see there's a great chance that you're going to fail. But you can do certain things. You can issue a threat. You can say, world, back off. I've got a missile. I've got a nuclear capability. And that's going to drive that number down a couple of spots. You can also rely on your own military as the coalition offensive starts to build up. If you have a 5 or a 6 military, you're going to get a certain type of military deterrence. You can also get a deterrence value or protection value from your Russia-China relations part of the board. So that's what I meant by earlier. I said they all work together and they interact and they affect everything. So that's kind of that area. Your regional tensions they start at 0 or 1. Your regional tensions are an indicator of how the rest of the world feels about you. Are you doing things right? Are you developing technology that they've asked you not to develop? And you can hide your technology. You've got 2 different tokens down here, and I'll go ahead and show those to you. You've got called what is called your evident nuclear development level. It's a green one, kind of that lime green, and that's an unknown. And then you've got your nuclear development level, your actual nuclear development level, ANDL. And the actual is always located below the evident nuclear development level because you're trying to hide that, right? When UN inspectors come in, you're trying to hide that. You're going to get a roll. If they find it out, you're going to flip those, and then, oh my gosh. So theoretically, the world might think you're only at a 1. You haven't really developed any technology, when in reality, you may be up to a 3. So when that is found out, this tension level is going to increase a couple. And then down here, it's going to tell you, well, you're going to continue to have an increase because everyone's upset, worried, and they fear you. So that's going to affect that regional tensions. The other thing that's going to affect regional tensions are events. Sometimes it'll say, oh, regional tensions go up 3 because you try to do this. And so those are things that are going to affect that. You can't let this get out of control because then you're going to be invaded by the coalition often. And when they do that, you're done. They're going to come in, they're going to take you out as the leader, and you will not be able to participate in the game anymore. On the right side, you're going to track your military strength, you're going to track your social economy, and then you're going to track your U.S.-China relations and your diplomacy. Diplomacy is used to increase these relations. You start out at strong, but over time you're going to wane. As certain events come up, it's going to lessen it. And you need to work on keeping that high. I try to make sure I'm at least at neutral, but more often than not, it's hard to do that. But being at strong is obviously the best. Being it strong, you're going to get a certain amount of every turn. They're going to give you ability or access to borrow money. And borrowing money is key because that keeps you able to develop infrastructure. You have to ultimately pay that back because at the end of the game, if you have over a certain amount, you take victory point or Jusha point losses. So you want to manage that too. You want to manage your debt level. So that's a look at the board. I'm going to tell you that the board is very interesting. The other thing that I need to tell you about is the turn track. There are 12 of those turns. Sorry, I'm trying to think if you can see that. You can. There are 12 turns marked by a turn year. You'll notice that there are symbols on each of those dials. The first 4 are blue squares. The next 4 are red triangles. And the final 4 are white circles. I'm going to move this over here. That's going to coincide with the type of card that you draw. You'll notice these cards have a blue square on them. This card has a red triangle and a white circle. And then you have these technology chits. You're going to draw one of those. Actually, to start the round, you're going to draw a tech event, one of these. I'm going to go ahead and just show you that right now. So let's draw from the 1953 through 1974 pile. You're randomly going to reach in. You're going to draw one out. Okay. So that says no event. So that means you're going to discard that. You're not going to gain access to any foreign technology. So let's go ahead and keep pulling. Oh, there's another no event. And then finally, I pulled the research reactor. When you pull this, you are going to place it up here on the map in the available foreign technology box. It's just off screen right there. Right there, the yellow and black slanted line box. And then you're going to be able to do your diplomacy check to try to obtain that technology and then put it into these boxes, go back here, on the nuclear development track. So this is a miniaturized warhead, the second one, and this is a re-entry vehicle. And then these little ones are other technologies, missile defense system that allows you to fight off attack. It gives you a modifier when coalition attacks you, because if you've got them, they're worried about that, so they're not going to be as open to attack you. So that's a look at those, and then so let's just flip those over. So there are 2 of those reactor technologies in the first 4 chits, and there are 4 of those, or 5 of those. Chances are you could not draw them. If you don't draw them, that's really going to hurt you. That's a big source of points or Jusha points at the end of the game, and you're trying to get anywhere from 50 to 100 to have a chance of doing okay. There are also cards. Let's go ahead and just show you a card. As you look at this card, there'll be a title, Soviet-Korean Plot. Rival political party attempts to remove you from power. Okay. Coup d'etat is automatically triggered at a trigger factor of 8. So what's going to happen there? Typically you check each round these things called critical events that are up and down here. This is telling you that there is going to be a coup. You've become aware of it. You've received intel, or you feel like some of your cabinet members are acting weirdly. You know that a coup is coming. So it says only purges ordered in step 6 will reduce the risk. Bribes have no effect. Normally you can put money into the bribes to reduce the value of that number you've got to roll. Here it's telling you can't do that. All you can try to do is reduce that number by literally purging your cabinet members and ministers. I'll talk to you a little bit about that here in a little bit. But also at the bottom, there's the export market indicator. This is going to tell you that the export market actually increases in your favor this turn. So it's going to go, it starts there at a 16. You're going to go to an 18. Once again, that helps you because that's how many dollars you can receive. You really want this to come probably 3rd or 4th round, because by that point you'll actually be able to get more than 16. Here at the start, you're not going to be able to get that. But you're going to draw those cards. You're going to play them. There are several different types. I think there's like 10 cards. I should have counted them. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are actually 12 cards. Sorry, I had a triangle in there. 12 cards, and you're only going to draw 4 of these throughout this game. So that means there's 8 cards in there that you're not necessarily going to see potentially until after your third or fourth play. So that is one thing that I do like about the game. I feel like there's a lot of replayability. It's not just the same thing over and over and over and over again. It's going to change based on these cards. So the technologies for the second level, there are 2 out of 4 that are miniaturized warhead. So you figured out how to put a miniaturized warhead onto your rocket. One of those is a no event, and then this one is the USSR collapse. So sometime in that second area, 1981 to 2002, you're going to pull this and Russia's going to collapse. So what that means is you're going to get less ability for additional money from them, and their strength potentially is not going to be as good. So that's another thing that kind of affects the game. The last one, or the final kind of decade, there is a re-entry vehicle. Re-entry vehicle there that you can develop. There are 2 out of 5 of those, and then you've got these missile defense, once again, that help you in the coalition offensive in defending yourself. So that's how those work. I think the cards are very interesting. They're going to teach you some history, some events. They're going to help you understand what's happened in the history of North Korea. I'm going to be honest, I don't know that I'm really up on that. But the cards are a very interesting part of the game. And once again, there's a lot of those there. So you're going to play this game 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times before you've really seen all of those cards and experienced all of their effects. So replayability, I think, is a good thing in this game. It's not just the same stuff over and over again. So let's go ahead and go back to the board. We'll get into some of how a turn structure works. I'm not going to do a playthrough, but I do want to show you how this stuff works. So first off, I'm going to show you the minister. So at the beginning of the game, you take 4d6. Sorry. You're going to take 4d6 and you're just going to roll them. And then you're going to have all of those rounding up. So for instance, a 3 is going to actually end up being a 2. A 4 is going to be a 2. A 1 is going to stay the same, and a 4 is going to be a 2. So you didn't get great luck. Your initial ministers aren't going to be great, but that's actually very good for the game terms that I'm going to show you, because it'll be a good example. So I'm going to go ahead and put a minister here in the industrial minister on the first of 4 terms, and he's going to be a 2. That's going to offer a 2 benefit to that. I'm not really interested in nuclear development right now because I don't know that I'm going to have the technologies necessary, and I can't move up. You'll notice this track. You are limited by this technology. Until you have research reactor, you cannot move beyond stage 1. So I'm going to put another 2 there in the public services minister for my social economy, and another one there for my diplomacy. Diplomacy is good because I'm going to get that technology, so I have to have a good diplomacy score to be able to hopefully get that. So that's the minister. So those ministers are going to guide and direct you throughout the game. There's a point at the end of the round after you've gone through all these. There are basically 9 different steps. This is the nice handy-dandy player aid turn summary. It really is very good. There is an error on it, though. I did notice. Let me see if I can remember where that was. It had to do with your infrastructure. I think it's on the very back during reset the board. Okay, here it is, right here. So this one says increase infrastructure by 1 level. That should have said decrease. So what's going to happen at the end of every year, or actually it's 7 years, your infrastructure is going to get worse. So if you're not pumping money into it, kind of building it up, it's going to continue to get bad. And when it's down here, you're going to lose a lot of money. You just don't have the ability to take advantage of the land and the mining and the different resources that you need to survive. So you got to pay attention to that. But that is an error on the player aid that needs to be corrected. So when you go through the rules, remember that. So yeah, you're going to go through these 9 steps, and I was talking about the ministers. So I put out the ministers. What's going to happen at the end of 9? You're going to advance cabinet minister, skill and term. So you'll notice this guy has a 2 and he's in his first term. At the end of the 1953 turn year, I'm going to literally move him up to a 3. He just increases automatically, and I'm going to put him in a second term. So you're going to do that to everybody. So here, I'm going to move this guy, the nuclear minister, up to a 2 in his second term. This guy's going to become a 3 in his second term, and he's going to become a 3, or she, in the second term. So you'll notice they're all in their second term now, and they're getting to be better skilled. Anything above a 3 is pretty good. 3, 4, and 5 are pretty excellent. Man, it's hard to have a 6 because that's going to lead to your cabinet ministers revolting against you and trying to do a coup d'etat. And they're going to add levels or modifiers to that in a bad way for you. So one of the options during the turn, and I'm kind of going a little out of turn, is you can either intimidate an individual minister to improve his individual performance. So let's say I really wanted to develop nuclear technology here at the bottom. I could do what's called an intimidate. I spend a resource. I don't kill him, and once again, that's a negative term, I'm sorry. But I'm going to tell him, hey, look, if you don't do a better job, I'm going to lock you up, or I'm going to lock your family up, or I'm going to kill you. I mean, once again, hard for me to say those things because they're so out of my character. But if you intimidate him, he's going to go up a level. Oh, all of a sudden he's going to work harder. He's going to try harder. So now you got a guy that's +3. So let's move him back for the... So the next option that you have is you can purge a minister. And this actually isn't a very good example because, anyway, let's just say the industrial minister, I'm like, I'm not happy with the 3. And I want some of my other ministers to get scared and go ahead and increase in value. So I'm going to do what's called a purge. So I'm going to spend a resource, throw that in the circulation from my revenue. I will take that minister. It's assumed that you lock him away in a concentration camp, ship him out east, do whatever you think a tyrant or dictator would do. And then you're going to re-roll that die. Okay, I rolled a 2, so he becomes a 1, and you reset his term. So that didn't work out for me. It's very hard. I'd have to have... There's no way I could have increased his value at that time by doing this purge. But I wanted to increase the values of some others. Anybody that's less than the 3 that he was, you're going to automatically increase. Once again, they get intimidated. They get scared, and they're going to try to work harder. So why in the world would you ever purge, say, a guy that was a 6? Well, once again, that coup d'etat, one of the modifiers, and that's in a negative way towards you, is you're going to gain 2 spaces on these little areas for each level 6 minister. That guy's capable, he's confident, he's connected. He's trying to get rid of you, so you have to go ahead and purge him. So let's say he's a 6. I'm purging him because I don't want this to happen. I'm going to roll that. I rolled a 5. You divide that by half and round it back up, start him over at a 3. That then is going to, everybody that was lower than a 6 is going to increase 1 automatically. So all these guys are going to go up to a 4. So that's why you would do what's called a purge. It's something that you really have to do in order to keep increasing your minister's value, as well as, and they don't move up in their term, but as well as keeping the risk of you being kicked out of office through a coup. So that's that. So let me just go ahead and start. We pulled a card, we pulled a chit. Next, we're going to start. Flip that over. We are going to do our collect resources. So currently, my minister is a 3. I'm going to go over here to this column, and I'm going to find, there's a 3. Then you cross-reference that with your production level, which currently is a 1. It says I'm going to earn 9 resource points. Then you follow this little table down. You can see these waggly lines. My infrastructure's bad. I'm going to lose 2 points. So 9 minus 2 is a 7. There are cards that may give you a couple of extra resources that you could now lose or use to gain more, but currently you're at a 7. Then you come over and you look at your export market. You're then going to do your economic sanctions on that 7. It is your ENDL, your evident nuclear development level, -1. So my ENDL right now is a 1, -1 is a 0. I'm not going to lose any more money. Then I compare that number to my current export market, which is an 18. So 7 and an 18, you take the lesser of those two values, those are the dollars that you're going to receive. So I'm only going to get, and this is very typical for a first turn, is getting 7 straight up dollars as revenue. So then what you can do is you can also take foreign debt. So you have a debt limit. Currently my debt limit is a 9. I can move my current debt. You've got some markers here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm starting out. I need some extra money. So I'm going to incur 4 debt to get 4 more revenue. So all of a sudden I have 7 plus 4. I have 11 revenue. Then we're going to go into the next phase before we enact our, before we put those resources out on the board, we're going to do a critical events check. So you're going to look at these 4 critical events, and written on the board in very small writing, I wish they had written it a little bigger. You're going to roll for these different things. You're going to roll a 12-sider. So currently, the natural disaster is always a 1 or a 2. So you're going to roll a 12-sider. It came with this really cool purple 12-sider. I really like it. So I'm going to roll it. I rolled a 5. So I don't have a disaster. Now that I've checked that, I'm going to move it over to check to remind myself that I checked it. Next, you're going to look at your revolution. Are you treating your people well enough that they're ready to revolt? You're going to go over here to the right of the board and you're going to look at your current social economy value. I'm currently a C. Then I come over here. Here is a C. It's on the 4th dial. I'm going to move that token over there to remind myself that it's at a 4, and then I have to roll again. Unfortunately, right now, I can't spend any dollars to modify that roll. This is just going to tell me if I have to even worry about it. So once again, I'm going to roll a 12-sider. I have to roll less than, not less than or equal to. So I roll and I roll a 9. No revolt, which is a good thing. It would be bad if it happened on the first turn. Next is a coup d'etat. This level is going to be set by the value of my ministers. And it says it right here, 1 for each level 4 minister. Well, I have 3 level 4 ministers. So I'm going to put that out to a 3. I don't have any level 5 ministers, which would earn me 1.5. And nor do I have any level 6. So it's a 3, which means I have to roll on a 12-sider 2 or less to have a coup that's starting to brew up against me. So I rolled a 9 or a 6. Sorry, I rolled a 6, so it doesn't happen. So that one's been checked. Sorry. Then we go to the coalition offensive. Coalition has a whole bunch of factors. It is tied really to your regional tensions. Level 1, your regional tensions are 1. You can't have 1, so it's been checked. And there are no adjustment factors because I haven't got anything at this point. Not going to do any threats because I don't have a missile. You have to have nuclear development level 3 to have a missile. I don't have that, so you have to skip this part. Then you go to the regional tensions. You're going to do a dissipation, -4. So I'm at 1. It's going to just stay there. You're also going to roll what's called a DMZ incident dice. If you roll a 1 or 2, there's going to be an incursion on the DMZ, and it's going to go up 2 points. Or I'm sorry, nothing. If you get a 1 or 2, there's nothing. A 3 or 4, it's a 1. 5 or 6, it's a 2. I rolled a 1. Therefore, there were no incursions on the DMZ. Nobody got upset. We move beyond that. So now that I've checked all of those critical events, I've managed my cabinet, I've got my resources, I've checked the critical events. Now I'm going to go about the business of using my 11 resources to develop what I've got. So I'm going to take that out because I don't have at the beginning of the game access to that technology. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to definitely make sure we have capital investment. So it takes 6 6 resources. So I'm going to put 6 resources up there to move my production level up 1. I also want my infrastructure to go up a little bit. So I'm going to put 2. If you put 2 resource counters, your infrastructure level will increase 1. Now, I got to pay for my military. You always have to pay the value of the level of your military. So I have to pay 1 for my level 1 military. You can also pay an extra resource to have your military level grow higher, but you have to have production level that matches it. So if I want a 2nd level military, I need to have a 2nd level production. During the first turn, can't do that. So what would I want to do? I probably would want to spend these remaining 2 resources on trying to bump up this social economy roll. So we'll go ahead and put those there. So that's the allocation of my resources. I've done that. The only thing I have to worry about is now carrying those out. I don't have any threats that are going to be done. I don't want to do a threat myself, or a critical event I don't want to do a threat, and I don't have any other things that I can necessarily raise up. So then we're going to do what's called implement your policies. The dollars that you've put out, you're now going to enact. So I'm going to take these 6 coins or 6 resources. I'm going to move my production level up 2. That's going to net me more. Remember, a level 3 minister got me 9 under number 1. It's going to get me 11 under this one. So it does increase. If I can get him to a 4, that's going to increase even more, up to a 13. I also put 2 in my infrastructure. My infrastructure level is going to move up. The bad news is, at the end of the turn, when we reset the board and move to the next year, this is always going to go down 1. So really, investing only 2 is going to stop me from dropping below a certain level. And you just follow this board down. I have no nuclear development. Military, I just pay my 1 to maintain my military. Now we get to the social economy. So I'm going to roll 2d6. I'm going to be able to modify it. Currently I'm at a level C. 2d6, I can modify it by the number of resource tokens that I put in there. I put 2, and then the skill level of my minister. So I'm going to modify this 2d6 by 6, and then I'll look at this table. So let's go ahead and roll that. Okay, I rolled pretty well. I rolled an 8. Plus 4 is 12, plus 2 is 14. My social economy is actually going to increase 1 level. So I've done that. I take my money, I put those back in the revenue space, and we move on. So that's all that I don't have to do relations, because they're already there. We're done. We're done with all that stuff. I'm not doing diplomacy or anything else. So that was a very quick example of a turn. Once again, this isn't a playthrough. I have considered doing a playthrough, and I might end up doing that. But I wanted to show you the basics of the game and talk to you about how it works. So real quickly, my thoughts about the game. So 12 turns. Each turn will take you at the beginning of a game, probably your first game, it's going to take you 15 minutes. You're going to have to refer back to the rule book. The player aid is very handy and dandy, and it actually refers to the section. Like, for instance, if you have a question here about triggering events, you can go to 4.8.4, 4.8.1 through 4.8.3. So it's a case and number rule book setup, very easy to find. It's got a good table of contents so you can find the different sections if you're looking. But a turn's going to take you 10 to 15 minutes at the start. Probably by your second or third turn, it becomes more natural. You're going to cut that down to 5 to 7 minutes. And I think usually by the end of the game, and even into your second and third game, each turn's going to be no more than 5 to 10 minutes. No more. So you're going to play it in an hour to an hour and 15, unless you just can't remember the rules and you have to go back to the book over and over and over and over again. So the play time, 60 minutes to 2 hours. That's kind of standard. Talked about replayability already. I believe this game is ultimately replayable because there's a lot of different cards that you don't get to have. Dice rolling. I showed you how you mitigate your luck by adding resource tokens. We can also do a coup. Let's do an example of a coup. So let's say it's under these conditions. I've got 3 4th level ministers. So that means I'm going to set my coup number at a 3. It's right there. And you'll notice there's these numbers on the box. That's where you set it for those levels. These numbers refer to the numbers that you actually roll. So let's say I also had access to one extra resource that I could have put here. So I'm now going to spend that resource, bribe an official and say, hey, don't take me out. And I'm going to move that down. So all of a sudden, I went from having a 33% chance, I mitigated that risk, paid a resource, and moved that down to only a 1 or 2, which is a much, much, much less 1/6 of a chance of success as compared to before. So I'm going to roll my die, and I rolled an 8, so I succeeded. So I fought off that coup. The other way that you can mitigate your risks, so let's say you had a 6 level minister here, a 5 level minister, and then you've got your 2 4s. That's bad, because let's set that level. A 6 is going to give you 2, the 5 is going to give you 1.5, and then those 2 4s are each going to give you 1. So there's 1, 2, 3.5, 5.5, or 6. So you're going to move it all the way up here to a 9, basically an 8 or a less. What you're going to have to do then, if you didn't have money to bribe, which you got to watch out for that stuff, you can now do what's called a purge. Again, remember we talked about purge earlier? But I can actually go ahead and spend dollars if I have them. I can put this dollar here on this area, and I'm going to purge that minister, because that minister is the senior level minister and he's leading a coup, and it's going to hurt me. So I'm going to purge him. I'm going to roll 3 divided by 1. 2 is 1. Put it up to a 2 and start him over. He's now all of a sudden not going to offer that +2, so I'm going to move it down a couple of spots. So you're mitigating that risk by doing certain things. I rolled a 6. So I would have actually had a coup that succeeded. So I also didn't talk about the military deterrence because that's not important. There's all these factors that will go into that. But the aspect of the game that I really like is the concept of resource management. You have scarce resources. You have anywhere from 10 to 15 resources a turn, and you got to do good with them. You've got to build up your industrial capital investment, get you up to 5 and 6 so that you can develop that. You've also got to keep your infrastructure high. You got to focus on that for the first 2, maybe 3 turns. And then you got to start building your military. But you got to remember, as your military gets higher, it costs more and more to maintain that. So that's like more resources you have to put in. You also have to keep your social economy high, your Russia and Chinese relations high. You have to worry about development of nuclear technology and keeping your regional tensions low. And you got to manage your debt. You can't just out of the blue take out $50 million in loans. You're going to have to pay those back. So I really like that scarce resource management, and I really like the concept of managing those ministers. Once again, don't like the word intimidate or purge, but managing those ministers to benefit you but not hurt you is a very big part of the game. If you don't have ministers that are 4s and 5s often, you're not going to do well, because you're going to have to put more of your scarce resources into 1 or 2 items to bolster them. If you have resource or ministers that are 4s, 5s, or 6s, you can only put 1 or 2 in there, and you're going to hit the goals that you need to increase those levels. I really like that aspect. I also really like the aspect of the threat. And it's not always a nuclear threat. Remember, the world doesn't necessarily know where your technology development is, whether you really have nuclear weapons or not. And you're just saber rattling. So you're saying, we're going to do a missile launch or a missile test. And the world kind of freaks out. And what ends up happening is, based on the threat effects, and the more you do the threat effects, the less benefit you're going to get. But the first time you do a threat, you're going to get some concessions. People are going to pay you a certain amount of money, and they're going to say to you, oh, please don't do this. Roll 2d6 and you're going to get a certain amount of resources. I rolled a 3, so we're going to get 3 resources. That's an interesting aspect. So you've got to use this and manage it such that you can get money. You got to get more money, because that more money you can invest and get your technologies up. Really enjoy that. The regional tensions is probably the one that's the most difficult to manage. What I would say is that you really have to watch how many threats you do. You also really have to watch your evident nuclear development level versus your actual. You don't want the world to find out what you've got. It comes down to a die roll that you can't necessarily modify. But the odds of that, I think the UN inspectors don't find out that you're developing nukes unless they roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4 on a 12-sider. So it's not going to happen all that often, but it will happen. You also, to fight off the coalitions, you got to make sure your Russia-China relations are positive, because they're going to offer you a +2 protection value at the highest level. Your military also will offer a military deterrence value. So you're up at a 4, 5, or 6, you're offering 2 or 3 deterrence value to these coalition offensives. And that's very, very important. You gotta make sure you understand that. And then finally, at the end of the game, the last 3, 4 turns, you always need to play the game, and you need to look at what the scoring values are going to be. Let me see if I can find those. Yeah, evaluate performance in the rulebook. It's on page 15. But you're going to use these general score of Jusha points to gauge how well you did. My first play, I did adequate leadership. I had 34, I believe it was. I had too much debt. So it says mild applause from the party, though they look fondly back at the days of Kim Il-sung. So to do really well, you have to have 50 or higher, and to do really, really well, supreme leadership, you need to have 74 or higher. In order to get that, man, you're going to have to manage well. You're going to have your debt level low. You're going to have to make sure that all your technology is up as high as you can get on the nuclear development. And it's just going to take a real concerted effort to get to that point. So in conclusion, I know this wasn't a full playthrough. I've thought about doing a full playthrough, but I felt like I needed to give you a background for the game, how it works, what you're trying to do. I find the game interesting. I've played it 2 full times. First time, I think I got the adequate leadership. The second time, I got remarkable leadership, but man, it was only like at a 52 or 53, just above that level. So I want to play it again, because now I feel like I understand a little better what I have to do, and I can probably try to get a little higher. But a lot of it comes down to your dice rolls and the types of cards that you draw. I'm telling you, if you draw the bad cards, there are some cards in there that are just horrendous. And if you get those cards, you're going to be in for some big trouble. But that's part of the game. You can't manage that. You can't manage a card. So anyway, I enjoy the game. I find it to be interesting. I find it to be educational. And I think it gives me a different perspective and look at a country like this who's trying to emerge. I think I'm more of a softy than obviously the leadership of DPRK. I always make sure my social economy is up near the top, because I'm worried to death about a revolution. The reality is you probably need to make sure it's at least no lower than a D. It can get all the way to an F level, and that sounds as bad as it really is. But really enjoy it. I think the game's well put together. I think the rule book is generally, for what it is, pretty descriptive. I also feel like they have a very good example of play. It's about 5 pages, 6 pages. So that helped me a lot. I read through that. I followed it. If I didn't understand a point, I would go to the rule book and read about that. So I liked that. Now, the negative. Aside from the fact that you're playing a dictator, the game can seem fairly repetitive in its processes. You have to collect resources, you have to put them places, you make die rolls. Fairly repetitive. But as I mentioned, you can mitigate that by putting resources in different areas, and that's where choices come in and your tough decisions. I like that part. but the roteness of doing the same thing over and over and over again for 12 turns can get a little repetitive. But a lot of these solitaire games, that's kind of the way it is. They have to set up a system that creates the circumstances under which you need to struggle. And I think that this does that well, and it's a challenging game, but it can get a little repetitive. The other thing that I don't like is there are a lot of simple little one-off rules that are very hard to keep track of. A lot of them have to do with these different little modifiers that you see here on these boxes. That's just too small for my old eyes. I would have liked to have seen maybe another player aid that would have listed those by section. I could probably do that. My guess is maybe that's online as well on BGG. I need to figure that out and follow those. I think finally, the thing that I don't know that I enjoyed is the scoring system seems a little off to me. I'm not sure under what circumstances you're really going to get the very lowest levels, and also look at it, and I'm not sure it's going to be really very possible to get the highest levels at all. There are some of these cards, and let me show you that if you get these, this does help. And maybe that's what happened. I didn't get enough of these, and maybe that's why. Let me show you an example of these 3 cards. And this is an example of something I don't like about the game, but it may sound like I do like it, because I like a challenge. I do like to be tested. So here you'll notice this card really is very simple. It offers +2 regional tensions because of this event, the Hatchet incident. And it also is going to offer you 3 Jusha points. So literally, I put that card up here into kind of my scoring column, and at the end of the game, I got +3 Jusha points. Really for doing nothing, pulling a card. I was a little disappointed in that. And there's a couple of those. Here's another example of those. So, once again, +3 Jusha. So I'm going to play that. It gives me a negative effect. But there with those 2 cards, I got 6 Jusha points, which for nothing, right? It's just a given. Now, here's an example of a card that you actually have to do something. So at the end of step 2, place 0 to 4 resource counters on this card from revenue. Roll a d6. If resource counters plus your dice roll are 6 or greater, then you have a success. +8 Jusha, discard top up. Else, -2 Jusha, discard top down. So to me, this one is a better example of, because I have to invest in this. And this is Blue House Raid. DPRK attempts assassination of the South Korean president. If I invest those 4 resources, man, I have an opportunity to get 8 Jusha points. That's pretty good. I also have a chance to get -2. So that's an example of a card that I wish they would have had more of. I want to say there were only 2, maybe 3 of those. I prefer those to the automatic, just give me 3 Jusha points. So that's something I don't know. The scoring system maybe seems a little challenging, a little difficult. I do like that I don't have to worry about the score throughout the game. I can do that at the end of the game. So overall, my impressions of Rogue State is it's a good game. Interesting simulation of a topic I've never played a game on before. Very unique, very well done and laid out. Everything seems to make sense, and there are things that work together, so you can manipulate A to get B to be better. You can turn the dials, so to speak, and you see all these dials everywhere, or push a button, and it's going to affect a button or a dial somewhere else. I like that. Graphically, I think the board is laid out very well. This is a polybag game. Probably cost $25 from Tiny Battle. I think it's well worth it. I think it also has a print and play version on Wargamers Vault. So if you're interested, check that out. I think that's a good way to get to it. But I'm coming to an hour. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up with one final thought, because I hear this a lot online. Should we be playing a game about this? Should I be playing a game where I'm the dictator of the North Korean, dictatorship? Is that something we should be doing? Why or why not? I've already said my opinions about it. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel great. It feels very very opposed to who and what I am, but it's interesting. It's a different way of looking at things, a different way of dealing with situations in life. I don't know. I think it's a very eye-opening experience. I have a couple of games like this. Jeff Davis is another one from White Dog Games that I have where you're playing the Confederacy during the American Civil War. Slavery is addressed in that game. It acts as a resource. Is that right? So I guess I would say I think it's okay. I think it's okay to understand and see things from different people's perspective. I hope you agree. Maybe you disagree. Let me know your thoughts. But thanks for watching. I've enjoyed this game. I'm going to at least play it one more time, and I might consider doing a full playthrough. So thanks for watching. I've been Grant for the Player's Aid, and this has been Rogue State from Tiny Battle Publishing, designed by Mike Molyneux. Good job, Mike. I think you did a good game here, and I appreciate it. Thank you for watching.